We're just days away from the beginning of the semester for college and university students. What will it look like in COVID? Hello and welcome to the Unpublished Cafe. I'm Ed Hand. Higher learning will have a new look due to the pandemic. Colleges and universities are shifting more to an online model with a few options for smaller in-person learning. In the U.S., some universities return to class only to have to shut down due to outbreaks of COVID. How will teachers and students adapt? How will it be as safe as possible? What's going through the minds of parents? As with this pandemic, we're learning a new way to do things. Coming up on the Unpublished Cafe, we'll hear from the teachers and their concerns, as well as students that will be the guinea pigs in this. They have their own thoughts. First, let's look at the health aspect of returning with Amir Attaran, professor in the faculties of law and medicine at the University of Ottawa. And Amir, how comfortable are you with the plans to return for college and university students?
Well, personally, I'm fortunate because the University of Ottawa, where I am, is not going to be holding in-person classes. All of that's going to happen online. Now, other institutions aren't being as clever as this, if I can be so blunt. The University of Toronto is planning an in-person return, contrary to the advice of its own epidemiologists, by the way. And in the U.S., as I'm sure you know, Ed, many universities and colleges have opened up with catastrophic results for their students and a total failure to maintain education on a steady keel for the students.
There doesn't seem to be a common thread between, how colleges and universities are offering classes. And you used the U of Ottawa and University of Toronto as an example. Is that part of the problem, that everybody just makes up their own idea?
Well, it seems to be. And that's not just a university and college problem. I mean, if you look at the microcosm of schools, K through 12, in Ontario, the Ministry of Education has not decided on any minimum standards that apply throughout the province for schools. Instead, they've left a very large part of it to the schools, to the school boards to decide. And here in Ottawa, we have several school boards. We've got English, we've got French, we've got Catholic. They're not converging on the same decisions. In other words, what's happening is a devolution where the highest level of government with the most resources, the most knowledge, the closest connection to the public health establishment and the Ministry of Health is punting and is leaving much less resourced school boards to make decisions. That's happening in our schools, and it's going to be a terrible look before too long. But it's also happening in universities, and I think that's less recognized as true.
Would it be prudent to allow schools, colleges, universities in areas with little or no infection to become more open, or is that just inviting trouble?
It depends where you are. And in places with just absolutely negligible amounts of COVID, let's take Prince Edward Island. If you were to open the university, you probably wouldn't see too much bad happening as a result. You'd have to, of course, monitor as you went along. But Ontario is not Prince Edward Island, nor is Quebec. And increasingly, we're seeing cases flaring in Alberta and BC, basically most of the country. In those settings, it is more dangerous. You have to think that universities and schools and colleges, all of these institutions, they are not in isolation from the communities in which they're situated. If COVID transmission is prevalent in the community, the schools and the colleges and universities will be affected by it.
Amir Attaran joining us in the Unpublished Cafe, professor in the faculties of law and medicine at the University of Ottawa, as we talk about colleges and universities returning this fall. And let's face it, for some students, for most students, this is going to be a whole different look. And for those who are going to be actually in the school, dorm life is never going to be the same, is it?
Oh, of course not. And in many universities have shut down dorms for that reason. But Classes aren't going to be the same if you conduct them in person. You'll have to have tremendous social distancing. Some educational arrangements are very hard to socially distance. Think of a kindergarten. Kids cry. They have little meltdowns in kindergarten because they're young things. How many kindergarten teachers have not in their career dealt with that by giving the child a hug? That's of course what you do. But how do you do that in the age of COVID?
Yeah, it's going to be very difficult. The quality of education, will it be the same or pretty close?
I think that remains to be seen. One advantage that universities have over less resource schools is they've had a decade now to practice online education. And if you look at the top universities, let's take Massachusetts Institute of Technology, for example. They've been putting all of their courses, nearly all, online for years. That's not to say that they don't unfold in person. They do. But you can get the same content on a computer because the lectures are videotaped and such. Those resources are there. And teachers in the university setting, many of them have gained experience with online teaching in previous years. They're now forced into it by circumstance, but they don't, many of them, come to it cold. I'm much more frustrated and saddened by the situation in the schools because school teachers have not had reason to develop that way of teaching until now, and they are being thrown in at the deep end. It's very, very hard on them, and I have the greatest sympathy for the situation they're in, particularly because the province, at least here in Ontario, but other provinces too, Alberta, Quebec, have been deeply unsympathetic and grudging in the needs that the teachers face to pull this off.
Why do you think that is?
Stinginess. In the case of Alberta, for instance, which is the richest province in Canada on a per capita basis, they've got money. It's actually the federal government that has put additional money in to the greatest extent for safe reopening of the schools. The province has chipped in very little. Likewise, in Ontario, not to the same extent, but it's federal funding that we see that is largely floating the ship for these schools. The provinces lack commitment. If one wants to be conspiratorial about it, I think the following is a fair theory. If you wanted in Ontario to open the schools safely, you'd have to cut class sizes down, probably just about half them, which would mean spending a lot of money on additional teachers and additional classroom space that you'd have to conduct classes in non-traditional spaces, conference rooms, disused storefronts, that kind of thing. That would cost a lot of money. That would be, however, the safe way of going about it. Now, it could be that the Ford government doesn't want to spend this money, but they also don't want to admit that they're doing anything unsafe, or they don't want to take the deeply unpopular decision of simply not opening the schools. So what they're doing, in my interpretation, is they're opening the schools with inadequate safeguards, knowing, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, that is unlikely to last for more than a couple months before the schools must close due to a lack of preemptive safety. And then when that happens, the Ford government can simply blame it on the pandemic rather than their own refusal to spend the money to do it properly. That's what I think is going on.
Now, I think that people that we are not talking about now are the parents, especially for first-year students. How do you assure or make those parents feel comfortable that their son and daughter is going off to college, university?
Well, I don't know that I can. I really don't know that I can. If I had a child who were heading off to the University of Toronto with its current plans, I would not sleep easy. And in fact, I would be very clear with my child that I hope that does not happen. where distance learning is an option, that is the option to choose. But of course, some other universities are exclusively relying on distance learning, and then you can sleep easy. If I were an American parent and I were sending my child, say to the University of Alabama that's had nearly 1,000 COVID cases among its students, wow.
Mm-hmm.
That would be the year that I would do anything to keep that kid out of education.
Amir, I want to thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much, Ed.
Amir Adarant's professor in the faculties of law and medicine at the University of Ottawa. Now, this summer has been a bit of a learning curve for college and university teachers who have to deliver a curriculum, yet do it in a safe way. Brenda Austin-Smith is with the University of Manitoba and the president of the Canadian Association of University Teachers, and she joins us now. Brenda, how comfortable is your group to return this fall?
It depends. How's that for a straight answer?
Yeah.
It really depends, because I think there's a lot of concern on the one hand that spaces are safe, because universities tend to be very sprawling structures, and the buildings have a lot of entrances and exits, and there are a lot of people who are dependent on elevators. So there's a lot of concern that some of those spaces won't be particularly safe this fall. And on the other hand, we have people who are aching to get back to their offices and their laboratories and their classrooms. And their concern is that they won't be able to engage their students in the way that they really want to in order to ensure high quality public education. So it's a bit mixed.
Now, in terms of the University of Manitoba, where you are, is it going to be online? Is it going to be returned to class, or is it going to be maybe a hybrid?
It's going to be a hybrid. Most classes in the upcoming fall will be taught remotely with some, synchronous and asynchronous sessions online. But there are some disciplines that are pretty well reliant on some kind of in-person instruction. I'm thinking here of chemistry labs, right? Biochemistry labs, nursing classes to teach people how to insert a catheter, medical situations in which you have to teach people how to, palpate an abdomen, things like this. Art classes, pottery classes, music classes. These are things, performance classes, visual arts. These are things that really rely on the body as either the mode, the instrument of performance, or, the target of activity. So in these cases, the university is working out safe ways of allowing people to return to labs, or students to return to labs, always observing physical distancing and with a lot of hand sanitizers and masking.
That's what I was going to ask. It was about, what about these things where you need that hands-on work? Labs were a great example, or in some cases, some students need placement as well. I guess that would be put on hold?
Yeah, some of that stuff will be either probably suspended or just delayed a little bit, or some of those internships or those work placements will be altered because, of course, many of the workplaces themselves are engaged in, online service and online production. So it's going to mean a lot of change. And I think what we at CIUT are really interested in making sure is that there are accommodations where accommodations are warranted, and that there's no penalty attached to any of these shifts or changes or delays, and that safety and, balancing safety and quality of instruction, that's what we're looking for.
Online teaching isn't the same as in person. How do you make sure those students who are learning online are actually getting it?
It's very difficult to ensure. I think one of the things that we talk about a lot at CIUT is leaning on the expertise and the pedagogical expertise of our members. So what we saw in the spring was kind of an instant turnaround, right? Everything shut down. Universities and colleges across the country suspended classes and announced they were going online. And people had about 4 to 5 days to convert to what we call emergency remote instruction.
Mm-hmm.
We couldn't even call it online teaching because most people were not themselves informed about how to go online in a really effective way. That's what the summer has been all about. So people who were fortunate enough not to be teaching in the summer, because many of our members do teach in the summer and they really had to pick it up. But many members were able to take the summer and they actually went to online workshops and they themselves were given support, and people just overhauled their courses and brought their pedagogical chops to the virtual table, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're going to see in the next couple of weeks is people rolling out their best informed efforts, because people are content specialists, right? Our members are content experts. And what they needed was time to get the box figured out, right? How is
Mm-hmm.
this vehicle going to work? So I have a lot of confidence in our members that they'll be able to interact with students in a very good way. And I think what our members are very good at doing is engaging students and appealing to the students' own desire to learn. I mean, there are always maybe some people that you can't reach, but I think key to this rollout, a successful rollout, is CAU team members being able to engage and communicate with their students and saying, you know what, I'm learning this, you're learning this, we're here to learn together. We're going to have to roll up our sleeves. We're going to have to build some trust. And I think trust is key to this success.
Brenda Austin-Smith is joining us in the Unpublished Cafe. She's with the University of Manitoba and the president of the Canadian Association of University Teachers as we talk about college and university students returning in the fall in the midst of the pandemic. Now, I've interviewed quite a few university professors in the last little while, and the one thing they've talked to me about is I've really got to get better with Zoom. I've got to learn. Are teachers getting some support on that?
Yes, they are, but I think they always need more. I think what universities and colleges are coming to terms with is that online support, Zoom teaching, whether you're using Zoom, WebEx, Teams, there are a number of platforms available, is that no one is an instant expert. And so what we see are more and more universities and colleges realizing there's a resource call here, and people can't go it alone. And in many cases, what colleges and universities have to do is make available some more technical support. This can mean offering student placements, actually, talk about internships and, work study stuff. Our employers have an opportunity to put some money into some student training so that students themselves can be paid to assist people in getting their Zoom courses and classes up and running and serve as kind of TAs or class kind of helpers to make sure that the chat function is monitored, things like that. But the other thing we realize is that students and faculty, students and academic staff may also need a little bit more assistance from the employer when it comes to just getting an adequate webcam or making sure that your internet is strong enough, right? That you have adequate access to a good, steady Wi-Fi connection. So again, universities and colleges may need to divert more of their funds away from the usual and actually dedicate some stuff to say, okay, you people need to get a really good, strong Wi-Fi signal. So here's a fund that we're willing to let you tap in order that you can actually broadcast what you need to broadcast when you need to broadcast it.
Brenda, I want to thank you for joining us.
Oh, thanks very much, Ed. You stay safe.
Brenda Austin-Smith is the president of the Canadian Association of University Teachers. Of course, those at the heart of the issue are the students. Many saw their last semester go up in flames when the pandemic first arrived. Now that the September semester is here, it'll be a different look for many. Brenda Chastelain is the chair of the Canadian Association of Student Associations, and he joins us now. And Bryn, are students worried about the return to college and university?
I think they're definitely a little bit concerned, and just mainly because a lot of us are uncertain of what the fall semester is going to bring. For many of us, we're moving to online delivery. Taking classes all online is definitely going to be different than a lot of us are used to. So I think there's a lot of concern just because we're worried about the uncertainty we'll be facing this semester.
Is the uncertainty the fact that each university, each college seems to have its own way to approach the pandemic and bringing students back?
I think that definitely is a challenge. A lot of us have a number of friends at different institutions. And so, all summer, I think all of us have been hearing different things depending on how individual schools are handling the COVID-19 pandemic. So it's going to be interesting to compare approaches between institutions and see, what works where and what works well for students.
And I guess in your situation, you are going to St. Mary's University in Halifax, and currently you are isolating. Why is that?
Yeah, so I go to school here in Halifax, but I grew up in Ontario, so I was able to get back for a few weeks in the summer to visit with family. And I'm on day 9 of my 14-day self-isolation, which is a requirement for all travelers coming into the Atlantic bubble from outside of the 4 Atlantic provinces. And now they've just added in some new requirements for students as well that will mean that every student coming in to the Atlantic bubble will have to get 3 mandatory tests for COVID-19 while they're here, just to make sure that we're keeping the Atlantic bubble safe and keeping COVID cases as low as possible.
How do you feel? How comfortable do you feel about St. Mary's approach to returning?
I think there's been a tremendous amount of work over the summer to make sure that students are going to be in a position to be safe. And so St. Mary's is going to be fully online in the fall semester. But they are looking at a few opportunities to open, certain on-campus services. So we're hopeful that, our library and our gym might be able to open in the next few weeks. And depending on, the state of public health guidelines and COVID-19 restrictions, there might be a few more opportunities on campus as well. So I'm hopeful that the university will continue to work with public health officials here in Nova Scotia just to make sure that students are going to have opportunities to get together on campus, but to do so safely.
How comfortable are you with online learning?
Personally, I tend to like online learning. It's a little bit more at my speed, but I'm definitely going to miss kind of the in-classroom component of being able to, kind of feel the energy of being on campus and in the hallways and getting to chat with people as you go through your day. But that said, I'm hopeful that professors will have had enough time over the summer to really plan their courses effectively. And so although I'm a little worried just because I haven't been through a fully online semester before, I'm hopeful that it'll turn out positively.
What challenges will it provide for students having to learn online?
I think one of the biggest challenges that we're hearing about is, students and their access to different forms of digital technology. So, in Nova Scotia, we don't have very strong internet access in a lot of rural communities. So I think a lot of students are having to really think about whether they might be able to learn effectively from home. And beyond internet access, I think for a lot of students that relied on using computers or, different forms of technology on campus, they're having to make sure that they have a laptop or a tablet that will let them complete their work and attend their courses online. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges because, the last thing that we want is students that are, pulling up to school parking lots or sitting outside of cafes in order to make sure that they have the internet to write an exam or to submit an assignment. So I'm hopeful that won't be too much of an issue for students, but it's definitely something that we've been hearing about over the summer.
Brenda Chastelin is the chair of the Canadian Association of Student Associations as he joins us on the Unpublished Cafe talking about the return to college and universities. And we're talking about online learning. And, there's a number of people who think tuition fees should be reduced with so much online learning. Is that where the students are coming from?
We've definitely seen a number of petitions and student groups coming forward kind of supporting reduced tuition. And I think the important thing to remember here is that, tuition is one big piece of the pie when it comes to affordability for students. But, a lot of students are really worried about how they're going to be able to afford, paying for groceries and keeping up with rent and other bills that they might need to pay. And on top of tuition, a really big topic of discussion for students over the summer has been auxiliary fees or, other course fees. So we've seen at a lot of campuses that, if the gym isn't going to be open, then students won't have to pay their membership fee. But there's a number of other situations where students, are still paying fees for services that they're not sure how they're going to receive the value for that yet. So I think there's a number of questions when it comes to student affordability, and adding these tuition payments in the fall is definitely going to add to that.
College and university student life, we've all been there. In the U.S., the return to college has already seen the shutdowns again. What's your association telling students if they are returning to class?
Yeah, so we've been working to make sure that students are aware of all of the public health guidelines and what they need to do from a health perspective. And the university's been doing a similar thing here at St. Mary's, making sure that students are well informed, that they have a strong awareness, of what the protocols are. And so we don't have too many students returning to campus right in September. We'll have some that are joining us on residence, but we also know that our university is continuing to take some time to make sure that we have processes and protocols in place before we have more students coming back.
Bryn, I want to thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Brenda Chastelin is the chair of the Canadian Association of Student Associations, and this leads to our unpublished .vote question. If returning college and university students will be learning online, should tuition be reduced? Yes, no, or unsure? You can log on and vote right now at unpublished.vote and have your voice heard. I want to thank Amir Adaran, professor in the faculties of law and medicine at the University of Ottawa, Brenda Austin-Smith, president of the Canadian Association of University Teachers, and Brenda Chastelin, chair of the Canadian Association of Student Associations. And I want to thank you for listening to the Unpublished Cafe. Stay safe. I'm Ed Hand.